The distress signal had been broadcasting for 3 days. It echoed across the void of space, a desperate cry that most of the galaxy chose to ignore. Vareth Station hung in the darkness like a dying ember, orbiting a red star that had seen better millennia. Inside its metal walls, 50,000 Talvine refugees huddled together, praying for a miracle that would never come. The Talvine were a gentle species. Their scales shimmered in soft greens and blues, and their large eyes held a sadness that came from watching their homeworld burn. They had fled when the Krell Empire arrived with their warships and their demands: surrender or die. The Talvine chose to run instead. Now they were trapped. 3 Krell warships surrounded Vareth Station like predators circling wounded prey. Each vessel was massive, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. The Krell didn't need 3 ships to destroy 1 station. They brought 3 because they wanted the Talvine to feel hopeless. They wanted them to understand that resistance was pointless. Elder Counselor Vexter stood in the station's command center, his clawed hands trembling as he watched the countdown timer. 2 hours until the shields failed. 2 hours until the Krell would board and take everything. His people would become slaves, their children raised to serve an empire that saw them as little more than animals. Any response to our distress signal? Vexter asked, though he already knew the answer. The communications officer, a young Talvine named Civ, shook her head. The Galactic Council acknowledges our transmission. They are still debating what action to take. Vexter's throat tightened. Still debating. They had been debating for 3 days while his people died of fear. The Council wouldn't act. They never did when it came to the Krell. The Empire was too powerful, too ruthless. No one wanted to be next on their list of conquests. What about the other species? The Valdani? The Hectarians? They expressed their sympathies, Counselor. But they cannot risk war with the Krell. Sympathies. Vexter wanted to laugh, but the sound would have been bitter. Sympathies didn't stop warships. Sympathies didn't save children. The view screen flickered to life. Admiral Thross appeared, his chitinous face splitting into what the Krell considered a smile. To Vexter, it looked like a predator baring its teeth. Talvine, Thross said, his voice grinding like stone on metal. Your shields are failing. Your time grows short. Surrender now, and I promise your deaths will be quick. Resist, and your suffering will last generations. Vexter straightened his spine. He wouldn't give this monster the satisfaction of seeing him broken. We are a peaceful people, Admiral. We have done nothing to provoke this attack. You exist, Thross replied simply. Your station occupies space that belongs to the Krell Empire. Your people breathe air that could be used by superior species. That is provocation enough. The transmission ended. Vexter turned away from the screen, looking at the faces of his command staff. They were all so young. Too young to die like this. Prepare to broadcast our surrender, he said quietly. Perhaps, if we cooperate, they will show mercy to the children. No one believed that, but what choice did they have? Civ's console began beeping frantically. Her eyes widened. Counselor, I'm detecting a spatial anomaly. Something is. Space tore open. That was the only way to describe it. Reality itself seemed to rip apart, a brilliant blue wound in the fabric of the universe. Energy crackled and sparked around the edges of the rupture. And then, slowly, impossibly, a ship emerged. It wasn't like any vessel Vexter had ever seen. The Krell ships were brutal and angular, all sharp edges and weapon ports. This ship had curves and purpose, its hull painted in dark gray with strange markings along its side. It was big, nearly as large as a Krell warship, but it moved with an elegance that seemed wrong for something so massive. The ship positioned itself between Vareth Station and the Krell fleet, a statement, a challenge. What is that? Vexthor whispered. Civ's fingers danced across her console. I'm receiving their identification beacon. It says they're human. The vessel is called the Indomitable. Human? Vexthor had heard of humans. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, a young species that had only developed faster than light travel a few generations ago. They were considered primitive by most standards. Aggressive, yes, but small in number and influence. What was a human ship doing here? And why would they dare challenge the Krell? The communications channel crackled to life. A female voice spoke, calm and clear. This is Captain Hana Kwan of the Earth vessel Indomitable. Verith Station, we have received your distress call. We are here to assist. Vexthor's breath caught in his throat. Assist? One ship against 3 Krell warships? Admiral Thros apparently found it amusing. His laugh boomed across the open channel. Humans, I've heard of your species. Barely crawled out of your own star system. And now you think to play hero? This doesn't concern you. Leave now, and I'll forget this insult. There was a pause. Then Captain Kwan's voice returned, and there was something in her tone that made Vexthor's scales prickle. It was the sound of absolute conviction. Admiral Thros, I'm going to say this once. Power down your weapons and withdraw from this sector. The Talveen are under our protection now. Thros laughed again, harder this time. Your protection? One primitive ship against the might of the Krell Empire? You're either brave or stupid, human. We're not asking, Admiral. We're telling you. Leave, or we'll make you leave. The channel went silent. Vexthor stared at the view screen, watching the human ship hold its position. It didn't retreat. It didn't waver. It just sat there, a wall of metal and determination between his people and death. They're insane, Civ whispered. They're going to get themselves killed. Vexthor didn't respond. He was thinking about the captain's words. The Talveen are under our protection now. Not a request for negotiation. Not a plea for mercy. A simple statement of fact. When had anyone ever protected the Talveen? Admiral Thros's voice cut through the silence like a blade. So be it, human. You want to die for these creatures? I'll grant your wish. All ships, open fire. Destroy the human vessel. The Krell warship's weapons lit up like stars being born. Energy beams lanced through space, converging on the Indomitable from 3 directions. The attack was overwhelming, enough firepower to vaporize a dozen stations. Vexthor closed his eyes. The humans had tried. That was more than anyone else had done. But trying wasn't enough against the Krell. Then he heard Civ gasp. He opened his eyes. The Indomitable was still there. Its shields blazed with absorbed energy, a dome of light that slowly faded to reveal the ship underneath, undamaged, unbroken. And then the human ship returned fire. What happened next would be recorded in galactic history. The moment when humanity announced to the universe exactly what kind of species they were. The moment when 50,000 Talveen learned that sometimes, against all odds and reason, help actually comes. The moment when no aid was expected, but a human battleship emerged from the void anyway. Captain Hana Kwan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the Krell weapons fire wash over their shields. The deck vibrated beneath her feet, a familiar sensation that she'd felt too many times during the colony wars. Around her, her crew worked with practiced efficiency, calling out shield percentages and weapon status. Shields holding at 82%, reported Yuna Choi from the engineering station. The young woman's fingers flew across her console, redirecting power flows faster than most people could think. They hit hard, but nothing we can't handle. Hannah allowed herself a small smile. The Krell had no idea what they were up against. Human shield technology had been forged in the fires of desperate survival, developed when colonies were being raided, and Earth's children were dying in the outer systems. Every innovation had been paid for in blood. Weapons officer, return fire. Target the lead ship's port engines. Minho Park leaned forward in his seat, his jaw set in a hard line. His fingers moved across the targeting controls with the precision of someone who had spent years dreaming of this moment. Railguns charged and ready, Captain. Firing now. The Indomitable shuddered as its main railgun spoke. Unlike the flashy energy weapons the Krell favored, human railguns were brutally simple. Solid slugs of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of light speed. No fancy particle beams. No exotic plasma. Just raw kinetic energy that hit like the fist of an angry god. The slugs crossed the distance in seconds. The Krell shields flared, then buckled. The tungsten penetrated the barrier and slammed into the warship's engine section. Metal screamed. Superheated debris exploded outward in a brilliant cascade. The lead Krell ship began listing to one side, its engine gone. On Virith Station, Vexther watched in stunned disbelief. They damaged a Krell warship with one volley. Admiral Thross's face appeared on the screen again, and this time he wasn't laughing. His mandibles clicked together in what Vexther recognized as anger. Impossible. Our intelligence said humans were primitive, barely spacefaring. Hannah's voice came through calm and steady. Your intelligence was wrong about a lot of things, Admiral. We're giving you one more chance. Withdraw, or the next shot takes out your bridge. Jinwoo Lee, the tactical officer, highlighted 3 points on the main display. Captain, I'm reading formation weaknesses in thigh. Our defensive pattern. If they maintain current positions, we can exploit the gaps between ships 2 and 3. Noted? Good work, Jinwoo. Thross snarled across the channel. You dare threaten the Krell Empire? We have conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed species far older and wiser than you. And yet, Hannah said softly, you're having trouble with one human ship. Makes you wonder what would happen if more of us showed up, hasn't it? That struck a nerve. Hannah could see it in the way Thross's eyes narrowed. The Krell ruled through fear and overwhelming force. They weren't used to being challenged. And they definitely weren't used to being hurt. All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. Thross roared. I want them destroyed. 3 Krell warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Indomitable lit up like a sun going nova. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic rounds converged on the human ship from multiple angles. Shields at 60%, Yuna called out, her voice tight but controlled. 50%. Captain, we can't take this kind of punishment for long. Then we don't sit here and take it. Hannah turned to her helmsman. Evasive pattern Delta 7. Take us through the debris field from that first ship. The Indomitable rolled and dove, moving with an agility that shouldn't have been possible for a ship its size. Human vessels were built different from other species' ships. They had to be. When you were always outnumbered, always fighting against bigger and stronger enemies. You learned to be fast or you learned to die. The ship wove through the wreckage of the damaged Krell vessel, using the chunks of metal and frozen atmosphere as cover. The Krell weapons fire hit the debris instead, creating a spectacular light show that accomplished nothing. Minho, target the second ship. I want their weapons arrays offline. With pleasure, Captain. The railguns fired again. And again. Each shot was precisely placed, guided by Jinwoo's tactical analysis. The Krell had built their ships to intimidate, to project power. They hadn't built them to fight an enemy that studied weaknesses and exploited them with surgical precision. The second Krell ship's starboard weapons array exploded. Then its port side. In less than a minute, the warship went from a threatening predator to a floating piece of junk. Hannah watched the tactical display and felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders. She remembered being a young officer during the colony raids. She remembered watching distress signals go unanswered because nobody wanted to risk their ships for distant settlements. She remembered the faces of colonists who had waited for help that never came. That's why she was here. That's why the Indomitable had diverted from its patrol route the moment they picked up the Talveen distress call. Because someone had to be the help that actually showed up. "Captain," Narisong's voice cut through her thoughts. The communications officer looked up from her console. "I'm receiving a transmission from Barrett Station. The Elder Counselor wants to speak with you." "Put him through." Vexther's face appeared on a smaller screen. His scales were trembling, his large eyes wet. "Captain Quan, you must flee. More Krell ships will be coming. You've done more than anyone could ask, but please save yourselves." Hannah shook her head. "Elder Counselor, with respect, we didn't come here to run away. We came here to make sure your people survive. And that's exactly what we're going to do. But you'll die. Maybe." Hannah glanced at her crew. Every single one of them was focused on their task, not a hint of fear or hesitation. "But if we run, you definitely die. We're not okay with that." She could see Vexther struggling to understand. In his experience, species didn't risk themselves for strangers. The galaxy ran on cold calculations of benefit and cost. Why would humans be different? He didn't know about Minho's colony. Didn't know that when raiders had attacked, the young man had watched his family dragged away while the nearest military fleet debated whether intervention was worth the political cost. By the time they decided to act, everyone was dead. He didn't know about Eunice settlement, where children had died of preventable disease because supply ships considered the outer colonies too risky for their insurance policies. He didn't know that every human on this ship had their own story of being abandoned, of being told they weren't worth the effort to save. But they knew, and they had made a choice. Never again. Not to anyone. Not if they could help it. "Admiral Thross," Hannah called out. "Last warning. Take your damaged ships and leave. You've already lost. Don't make this worse." Thross's response was predictable. "I'm calling for reinforcements, human. 4 more warships are on their way. When they arrive, I'll personally watch as we tear your ship apart piece by piece." "Sora," Hannah said to her medical officer, "prepare Medical Bay for incoming casualties. This is about to get worse before it gets better." Sora nodded, her expression grim. She'd already been treating minor injuries from the crew, burns from overloaded consoles, and concussions from the ship's violent maneuvers. But if 4 more Krell ships arrived, minor injuries would be the least of their problems. Doyan Han, the Marine commander, approached the captain's chair. His combat armor was already sealed, helmet under one arm. "Captain, if they board us, my teams are ready. I know you are." Hannah looked at the tactical display, at the 2 crippled Krell ships and the 1 still functional warship that was keeping its distance now. "But let's try to keep them off our ship if we can." "Understood. Though I wouldn't mind showing them what human Marines can do in close quarters." Hannah almost smiled. The Krell thought they were terrifying in ground combat. They'd never faced humans who fought like cornered animals, who turned every corridor into a death trap and every room into a fortress. The tactical display began flashing. Jingwu's voice was tense. "Captain, reading multiple hyperspace signatures. 4 vessels emerging. Confirmed Krell warships." The new ships appeared on the display, their weapons already charging. 7 Krell warships total now, against 1 human battleship. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Yuna spoke up. "Well, this is going to be interesting." Hannah straightened in her chair. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare for extended combat. And someone send a tight beam transmission back to command. Let them know we found a fight worth having." She looked at Virith Station on the view screen, at the thousands of Talvine refugees who were watching and hoping. No aid was expected, but the Indomitable was here anyway, and they weren't going anywhere. The fighter bay of the Indomitable was a controlled chaos of activity. Pilots sprinted to their craft, while deck crews made final checks on weapons and fuel systems. Hyen Kong moved through the noise with the calm of someone who had done this 100 times before. His fighter, a sleek needle of metal and fury, waited with its canopy, open like a mouth ready to bite. "Ghost, you ready?" Gina Rue called out from the next fighter over. She was half his age and twice as reckless, but she could make a fighter do things that shouldn't be physically possible. "Always ready," Hyen replied, settling into his cockpit. The neural interface connected to his flight suit, and suddenly he could feel the fighter like it was part of his body. "Try to keep up this time. That's my line, old man." The squadron channel crackled to life. Captain Kwan's voice came through, steady despite the situation. "Fighter Squadron, you are cleared for launch. Target priorities are the weapons platforms on the intact Krell ships. We need to even these odds." Hyen ran through his pre-flight checks in seconds. "Everything green. Ghost Squadron acknowledges. We'll give them something to think about." The fighter bay doors opened and space beckoned. 12 fighters launched from the Indomitable in perfect formation. Tiny arrows of metal against the massive bulk of the Krell warships. Admiral Thross watched them come, and his laughter echoed across the communication channels. "Fighters? The humans send fighters? What do they think this is? A planetary skirmish? There's no air in space, no terrain to hide behind." He didn't understand. The Krell used fighters too, but only as support craft. Swarms of disposable drones controlled by ship AI. The idea of putting living pilots in such small, fragile vessels seemed wasteful to them. They didn't understand human fighters at all. Hyen led his squadron in a wide arc, using the gravitational pull of the dying star to slingshot around toward the nearest Krell warship. His sensors showed incoming fire, heavy cannons that could vaporize his fighter with a single hit. He didn't try to outrun them. Instead, he flew straight into the debris field from the first damaged Krell ship. Chunks of hull plating, frozen bodies, pieces of equipment all floating in a deadly maze. The Krell targeting systems lost lock, unable to distinguish fighter from debris. "Follow my lead," Hyen commanded. "Use the wreckage. Make them work for every shot." The squadron split into 3 groups, each weaving through the debris with impossible precision. Gina took her group low, skimming so close to a chunk of hull that her fighter's shield scraped metal. The Krell guns tracked her, but kept hitting debris instead. "Target acquired," Hyen said calmly. "Weapons Platform 3, starboard side. I'm going in." His fighter was armed with modified missiles, smaller versions of the Indomitable's torpedoes. He locked onto the Krell weapons array and fired. The missile streaked out, found its target, and exploded in a brilliant flash. 1 weapons platform down. Dozens more to go. Gina's voice came through excited and breathless. "Ghost, I've got an idea. It's probably crazy. All your ideas are crazy." "What is it?" "That second Krell ship, the one we crippled? Its superstructure has holes we punched through. I can fly through them, come out the other side right behind their command deck." Hyen considered it for exactly 2 seconds. "Do it. I'll cover your approach." "You're the best." Gina's fighter peeled off, accelerating toward the damaged Krell warship. The ship's automated defenses tried to track her, but she was already inside their minimum range. She dove toward one of the holes the Indomitable's railguns had created, a tunnel of torn metal and exposed corridors. Any sane pilot would have gone around. The gap was barely wider than her fighter. One wrong move and she'd smear herself across the walls. "Gina, Wasn't interested in being sane, she cut her main engines and used maneuvering thrusters only, threading the needle through the superstructure at speeds that made her vision blur. Krell crew members scattered as she flashed past viewports, their faces showing the shock of seeing an enemy fighter inside their ship. She emerged on the far side, exactly where she'd planned, right behind the command section. Her targeting computer screamed at her about how close she was, how this shot could cause debris that would hit her. She fired anyway. The missiles slammed into the Krell command deck from point-blank range. The explosion tore through the ship's brain, killing its ability to coordinate defenses. The entire warship went dark, floating dead in space. "That's 2 down," Gina shouted triumphantly. "Who's next?" On the Indomitable, Minho watched the tactical display with something like awe. "Captain, the fighters just disabled another Krell ship. That leaves 5 operational warships." Hannah nodded. "Tell the fighters to regroup. We're going to need them for the next phase." But Admiral Thross had seen enough. His remaining ships pulled into a tighter formation, creating overlapping fields of fire that would make it suicide for fighters to approach. He was learning, adapting his tactics. "Humans," Thross broadcast, "your tricks are impressive, but tricks won't save you. I have called for more reinforcements. Soon you'll face not 7 ships, but 20. Surrender now, and I'll make your deaths quick." Narration looked up from her communications console, her face pale. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple hyperspace signatures. More Krell ships are inbound." Admiral Thross isn't bluffing. The bridge was silent for a moment. Una broke it with a bitter laugh. "Well, at least it won't be boring." Hyon's squadron regrouped in the shadow of the Indomitable, using the battleship's bulk as cover. He could see the other fighters, several showing damage from near misses and debris impacts. 2 of his pilots were gone, their fighters destroyed in the chaos of the battle. He keyed his microphone. "Captain Kwan, Ghost Squadron reporting. We've taken losses, but we're still in the fight. What are your orders?" There was a pause. Then Hannah's voice came through, and there was something in it that made Hyon's blood run cold. Not fear, but acceptance. The sound of someone who had made a choice and would see it through no matter the cost. "Ghost, I need you to protect the station. When the new Krell ships arrive, they might try to destroy it out of spite. Keep the Talveen safe. That's your primary mission now. And you, Captain? What about the Indomitable? We're going to keep their attention on us. Buy time for those refugees to evacuate, if it comes to that." Hyan understood what she wasn't saying. The Indomitable was going to fight until it couldn't fight anymore. And when it was destroyed, the fighters would be all that stood between the Krell and 50,000 innocent lives. Gina's voice cut into the channel, anger making it sharp. "That's suicide, Captain. You can't take on that many ships alone. We're not asking for permission, pilot. We're giving you an order." Vexther's voice suddenly interrupted, broadcast on all frequencies. No, I won't allow this. Captain Kwan, you must flee. We ... We'll surrender to the Krell. We'll spare you this sacrifice." "Elder Counselor," Hannah replied, and now her voice was gentle, almost kind. "We didn't come here to watch you surrender. We came here because everyone deserves a chance to live free. Your people, your children, they deserve better than slavery. So please, let us do what we came here to do." Back on the Indomitable's bridge, Jinwoo was frantically working his console. "Captain, I'm analyzing the incoming Krell formation. If we position ourselves here and here, we might be able to create a crossfire situation that damages multiple ships at once. Might? It's a 20% chance of success. But it's better than just sitting here." Minho turned in his chair. "Captain, I've still got 3 nuclear-tipped torpedoes in the magazine. We've been saving them, but if there was ever a time... Hannah looked at her crew. Young faces, determined faces. The faces of people who had joined the fleet because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They could run. Protocol actually suggested it. One ship against overwhelming odds was textbook suicide, but they weren't going to run. She could see it in their eyes. "Yuna," she said quietly, "can you give me more power to the shields?" The engineer grinned, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I can reroute life support. We won't need air if we're dead anyway, right?" Dark humor, I like it. Do it. Outside, space began to ripple as the Krell reinforcements prepared to arrive. Hyan positioned his squadron between Verith's station and the incoming threat. His hands were steady on the controls, though his heart was racing. "Ghost Squadron," he said softly. "It's been an honor flying with you all." "Save the speeches for after we win, old man," Gina replied. "I'm not dying today. Too much paperwork." Despite everything, Hyan smiled. Humans. Even facing impossible odds, they still made jokes. Still found reasons to hope. The hyperspace windows opened, and the Krell reinforcements began to arrive. More warships, bigger than the first group, their weapons already charging. Admiral Thross's voice boomed across the void. "Last chance, humans. Surrender or die." Hannah's response was simple. "Come and try." The Indomitable's engines flared to full power, and the battleship charged straight toward the Krell fleet. Behind it, 12 fighters followed, small and fragile against the massive warship's dot. No aid was expected. But humanity had come anyway, and they would fight against all odds and reason, because someone had to stand between the weak and those who would prey on them. Someone had to be the help that showed up. The battle had become a nightmare of light and violence. 7 Krell warships surrounded the Indomitable, pouring fire into the human battleship from every direction. The shields that had held so confidently before were now flickering, failing in patches, allowing weapons fire to scar the hull. On the bridge, alarms screamed. Yuna Choi worked like a woman possessed, rerouting power from every non-essential system to keep the shields active for just a few more seconds. Her console sparked, burning her hand, but she didn't stop. "Shields at 18%, she called out. 16. "Captain, we can't take much more of this." Hannah gripped the armrests of her chair, hard enough to hurt. Around her, the bridge was a scene of controlled chaos. Jinwoo frantically calculated firing solutions. Minho launched weapons as fast as the systems could cycle. Nari maintained communications, her voice calm even as she reported one piece of bad news after another. "Captain," Nari said, "the Galactic Council is watching. They're transmitting this battle across diplomatic channels." "Good," Hannah said through gritted teeth. "Let them watch. Let them see what happens when no one else will help." The Indomitable rolled hard to starboard, narrowly avoiding a plasma torpedo that would have punched straight through the weakened shields. The ship groaned, its structure stressed beyond design limits. In engineering, Yuna heard the sound of metal fatigue and said a prayer to whatever deity might be listening. Admiral Thross appeared on the viewscreen, his face a mask of triumph. "Still fighting, human? Your courage is admirable, but pointless. Look around you. You're surrounded, outgunned, and dying by inches. Surrender, I promise you a quick death." "We don't make promises we can't keep," Hannah replied. "And we don't surrender." She cut the transmission and turned to Jinwoo. "Tell me you found something. Anything." The tactical officer's face was pale, but his eyes were sharp. "Maybe. The Krell formation has a weakness. They're so focused on us that they've created a gap in their defensive perimeter. If we could exploit it ... what would it take? Everything we have left. All weapons, full power to engines, shields diverted to forward section only. We'd be defenseless from behind, so a suicide run. Jinwoo nodded slowly. Yes, Captain. A suicide run. Minho turned from his console. I'm still holding those 3 nuclear torpedoes. If we get close enough to their flagship, I could... The ship rocked violently. An explosion somewhere deep in the hull sent crew members stumbling. The lights flickered, then switched to emergency red. Yuna's voice came through the intercom, strained. Engineering to bridge. We just lost the secondary reactor. Main reactor is at 60% efficiency and dropping. I can give you 10 more minutes of combat operations. Maybe 15 if I push it. 15 minutes. That was all they had left, Doc. Hannah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the lives depending on them. The Talveen refugees watching from the station. Her crew, who had followed her into this impossible situation without question. The fighter pilots out there trying to protect civilians. With nothing but skill and determination, she opened her eyes and keyed the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. I won't lie to you. We're in a bad situation. The odds are against us. We're damaged, outnumbered, and by every logical calculation, we should be dead already. She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. But we're not dead. We're still here, still fighting. Because 50,000 people need us to be. Because someone has to stand up and say that the strong don't get to prey on the weak. Not today. Not while we still breathe. Her voice hardened. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to punch through their formation. We're going to get close enough to hurt them. And we're going to show the Krell, show the entire galaxy, that humanity doesn't abandon those who need help. We don't run. We don't surrender. We fight until we win or we can't fight anymore. She could hear it through the ship. The cheers. The sound of her crew rallying, finding strength they didn't know they had. Helm, set course straight for the Krell flagship. All power to forward shields and engines. Outside, Hyan watched the Indomitable begin its charge. No, he whispered. Captain, no, don't do this. Gina's voice crackled through. Ghost, what are they doing? Something brave and stupid. Hyan made a decision. All fighters, form up on me. We're going to clear a path for the Indomitable. With what? We're almost out of missiles. Then we'll use our ships. Whatever it takes. The 12 fighters, battered and running on fumes, formed a spearhead in front of the charging battleship. They dove toward the Krell warships, drawing fire, creating chaos, forcing the enemy to split their attention. 2 more fighters died in brilliant explosions. But they created the opening. The Indomitable charged through, its forward shields ablaze with absorbed energy. Minho fired the railguns in a continuous stream, not bothering with careful aim, just throwing as much metal downrange as possible. A Krell warship took a direct hit to its reactor. The explosion was spectacular, a miniature sun that briefly illuminated the entire battlefield. The shockwave threw other Krell ships off position. Distance to flagship? Hannah demanded. 3,000 meters in closing, Jinwoo reported. 2,000. Minho, prepare the nuclear torpedoes. I want them armed and ready. Armed, Captain. Just say the word. Admiral Thross's face appeared again, and this time there was fear mixed with his rage. What are you doing? You'll kill yourselves. Maybe, Hannah agreed. But we'll take you with us. The Indomitable was inside the Krell flagship's defensive perimeter now, too close for the big guns to track. Minho launched all 3 nuclear torpedoes simultaneously. They streaked across the gap, tiny missiles that carried the power of stars. The Krell tried to shoot them down. They managed to destroy one. But 2 got through. The nuclear explosions were silent in the vacuum of space, but their light was blinding. The Krell flagship's shields collapsed completely. Its hull ruptured in a dozen places. The massive warship began listing, atmosphere venting, fires burning in the oxygen-rich sections. But the Indomitable had paid the price for getting that close. Without rear shields, it had been defenseless. Krell weapons fire had torn into the engines, the reactor, the hull itself. Yuna's voice was barely audible through the static. Reactor failure imminent. I'm initiating emergency shutdown. We're dead in space, Captain. The Indomitable drifted, powerless, smoke and debris trailing from its wounds. The shields were gone. The weapons were offline. They were floating metal, waiting for the Krell to finish them. On Virith's station, Vexthur watched with tears streaming down his face. They died for us. They actually died for us. But Civ, the young communications officer, gasped. Elder Counselor, I'm detecting new hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts emerging. Vexthur's heart sank. More Krell reinforcements. It was over. Then the new ships appeared, and he understood why Civ sounded shocked instead of defeated. They weren't Krell. Space tore open in a dozen places. Through each rupture came a human warship. Not battleships like the Indomitable, but carriers, destroyers, cruisers. A whole fleet dot, and at the center, the largest vessel Vexthur had ever seen. A dreadnought that made the Krell flagship look like a toy. A new voice came across all frequencies, deep and commanding. This is Admiral Junho Song of the Earth Defense Fleet. To the Krell forces, you attacked one of our ships. You threatened our people. And you ignored every warning we gave you. The human fleet moved into formation, surrounding the remaining Krell warships. So now you face all of us. And we're giving you one choice. Surrender or be destroyed. Admiral Thross, broadcasting from his crippled flagship, tried to muster his authority. You can't threaten the Krell Empire. You're beaten, Admiral Juno interrupted. Look around you, Admiral. Your flagship is dying. 2 of your warships are destroyed. The rest are damaged. My fleet is fresh, fully armed, and very, very angry about what you did to the Indomitable. Narration, on the Indomitable's bridge, started crying. That's my father. That's my dad. Hana, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, managed a weak smile. I thought I recognized the voice. He always did have good timing. The Krell fleet hesitated. For the first time in the battle, they were the ones who were outgunned and surrounded. The human fleet waited, weapons charged, giving them time to make the smart choice. Finally, Admiral Thross spoke, his voice filled with humiliation. We surrender. Smart, Junho said. Now power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You're going to face trial for your war crimes. And you're going to tell your empire that humanity has drawn a line. Cross it again, and we won't be so merciful. As the Krell ships powered down, the human fleet moved to secure them. Medical ships approached the Indomitable, ready to evacuate the wounded. Vexthur activated his communications. Captain Quan? Can you hear me? Hana's face appeared on screen, bruised and exhausted, but alive. We hear you, Elder Counselor. Why? The question burst from Vexthur. Why did you risk everything for us? We're strangers. We had nothing to offer you. Hana was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, sad and true. Because someone had to. Because we remember what it's like when help doesn't come. Because the measure of a civilization isn't how strong it is, but how it treats those who can't defend themselves. She looked past him, at the thousands of Talvine refugees visible through the station windows. You're not strangers anymore, Elder Counselor. You're survivors. And we're going to make sure you stay that way. 6 months later, Virith Station looked nothing like the desperate refuge it had been during the siege. The damaged sections had been repaired, expanded even, with new modules built using both Talveen and human engineering. Ships came and went regularly now, bringing supplies, taking refugees to new homes, ferrying diplomats who wanted to see this place that had changed everything. Captain Hana Kwan stood in the main plaza, looking up at the memorial that had been erected there. 47 names were carved into black stone, each one representing a human who had died during the battle. Some had been on the Indomitable. Others had been fighter pilots who never made it back. All of them had died so that strangers could live. They still come here, you know, Vexter said, walking up beside her. The elder counselor looked healthier now, his scales bright instead of dull with stress. Every day, Talveen visit this memorial. Parents bring their children and tell them what happened here. What do they tell them? Hannah asked. The truth. That when the galaxy abandoned us, humanity came. That 50,000 lives were saved because one ship refused to look away. Vexter touched the stone gently. My people were taught that the universe was cruel, that the strong preyed on the weak, and that was simply the way of things. You showed us we were wrong. Hannah didn't respond immediately. She was thinking about the aftermath of the battle. The Indomitable had spent 3 weeks in dry dock, being rebuilt practically from the ground up. 47 crew members had been buried with full honors. The injured had recovered, though some would carry scars for the rest of their lives. And the galaxy had watched it all. The battle had been transmitted across every diplomatic channel. Species that had ignored the Talveen distress call had been forced to watch as humans fought and died to protect refugees. The Galactic Council had held emergency sessions. Editorials were written. Debates raged. Some called humanity reckless, warlike, dangerous, but others, especially those from smaller species who knew what it felt like to be helpless, they called humanity something else. Heroes. The Council officially recognized Earth's fleet last month, Vexter continued. Full diplomatic status. They can't ignore you anymore. They tried to ignore us before, Hannah said with a slight smile. That worked out well for them. You changed everything, Captain. The Krell Empire has withdrawn from 3 sectors. Other aggressive species are reconsidering their expansion plans, because now they know that if they attack the helpless, humanity might show up. Hannah shook her head. We're not the galaxy's police force, Elder Counselor. We can't be everywhere. No, but you proved that someone can be somewhere. That courage exists. That help can come. Vexter paused. 23 species have requested defense pacts with Earth. 23. All of them small, vulnerable, the kind that the big empires usually prey on. That was the real change, Hannah thought. Not the battle itself, but what it represented. For the first time, the weak had allies who would actually fight for them. The Indomitable is shipping out tomorrow, she said. New patrol route, deeper into the outer sectors. Looking for more trouble? Looking for more people who need help. Footsteps approached. Yuna Choi walked up, her arm still in a sling from injuries sustained during the battle. Captain, Admiral Junho wants to see you. Something about a new mission. Hannah nodded. Tell him I'll be there in a few minutes. Yuna hesitated. Permission to speak freely, Captain? Always. The crew is ready. We all are. Whatever the mission is, wherever it takes us, we're with you. She walked away before Hannah could respond. Vexter watched her go with a thoughtful expression. Your crew is loyal to you. They're loyal to what we represent, Hannah corrected. The idea that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard. I have something for you. Vexter pulled out a small data chip. It's a message recorded by every refugee on this station. All 50,000 of them. I thought you might want it. Hannah took the chip, feeling its weight. 50,000 voices, each one a life that had been saved. Thank you. No, Captain. Thank you. She left him there by the memorial and made her way to the communications center where Admiral Juno was waiting. The older man looked up when she entered, and a smile creased his weathered face. Captain Kwan, good to see you up and moving. Admiral, your daughter said you had a mission for us? Junho pulled up a star chart. 3 days ago, we received a distress call from the Outer Rim. A mining colony, non-aligned, being threatened by raiders. They're asking for help. Hana studied the chart. It was far from Earth, far from any major trade routes. The kind of place that usually got ignored because it wasn't strategically important. How many people? She asked. About 8,000. Mostly families. The raiders have given them 48 hours to evacuate or surrender everything they own. And the council? Still debating whether to send observers. Hannah almost laughed. The council never changed. The Indomitable can be ready to jump in 12 hours. I thought you'd say that. Junho's expression became serious. Hannah, you know what this means, right? If we keep doing this, keep responding to every distress call, Earth is going to make a lot of enemies. The big empires don't like it when someone disrupts their games. Then they can get in line behind the Krell. The Krell Empire is still licking its wounds, but they'll be back. And next time, they'll bring more ships. This could lead to war. Hannah met his eyes. Admiral, we've been at war since we reached the stars. War with raiders, with slavers, with empires that think might makes right. The only difference now is that we're not just fighting for ourselves. Junho was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Your father would be proud of you. He always said that humanity's greatest strength was our refusal to accept that things can't change. Is that why you came? When we were fighting the Krell, I came because my daughter was on that ship, Junho said simply. But I brought the fleet because you were right. Someone has to be the help that shows up. Might as well be us. He handed her a data pad. Your new orders. The mining colony is just the start. We're setting up rapid response teams, ships positioned throughout the outer sectors. Any distress call, we respond. That's going to stretch our resources thin. It's going to save lives. Isn't that what matters? Hannah took the data pad and smiled. Yes, sir. It is. She returned to the Indomitable to find her crew already preparing for departure. Minho was running diagnostics on the new weapon systems. Jinwoo was plotting jump routes. Yuna, despite her injured arm, was supervising repairs and engineering. Nari approached her on the bridge. Captain, I thought you'd want to know. We're getting messages from across the galaxy. Other species asking if we'll help them too. How many messages? Hundreds. And they keep coming. Hannah looked at the view screen, at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, people were in trouble. Somewhere, the strong were preying on the weak. Somewhere, distress calls were going unanswered, but not forever. Not anymore. Nari, send a general broadcast. Let them know that humanity hears their calls. We can't help everyone, but we'll help whoever we can. Yes, Captain. The Indomitable prepared to jump, its engines warming up, its crew ready for whatever came next. In the fighter bay, Hyan and Gina were running pre-flight checks. Joking with each other like they always did before a mission. In medical, Sora was organizing supplies. Preparing for casualties she hoped would never come, but knew probably would. In engineering. Yuna was coaxing every ounce of power from the repaired systems, making the impossible possible through sheer stubbornness and skill. Throughout the ship, the crew went about their duties with quiet determination. They knew what they were getting into. They knew the risks. But they also knew why they were doing it, because someone had to. Vexther watched from Virith Station as the Indomitable's engines flared. The human battleship began to move. heading toward the jump point, heading toward another crisis. Another group of people who needed help. Safe travels? Captain, he whispered. The ship jumped, vanishing in a flash of blue light. Gone to fight another battle, to face another impossible situation, to be the help that no one expected, but everyone needed. And across the galaxy, other human ships were doing the same, responding to distress calls, standing between the helpless and those who would harm them, making it clear that the old rules, the cold calculations of power and interest, they didn't apply anymore. Humanity had arrived, and they had brought with them a simple but revolutionary idea, that the strong had a responsibility to protect the weak. That courage mattered. That doing the right thing was worth any cost. The Krell Empire would remember the lesson they learned at Ferrith Station. So would every other aggressive species that thought conquest was their right. They would remember that humanity didn't abandon those in need, and they would think twice before they threatened anyone again, because no aid was expected when the Talveen sent their distress call. The galaxy had taught them that hope was foolish, that help never came, but a human battleship had emerged from the void anyway, and it changed everything.